Phil.
And we are suddenly ducks.
We've been playing a bit of Only War, and we thought we'd do a bit of introductions for you guys.
As I'm playing the heavy weapons lady called Boomer, her companion is a man called Crater. Oh, Phil, we can't hear you again.
God fucking damn it!
Well, we heard that.
Yeah, that came through. If it wasn't supposed to.
Just swear more.
Yeah.
Phil, what are you playing in Angry Expletives?
I'm playing Petros Locke, and I'm basically the doctor of the group. I'm a medic, and my companion is Angel. She is kind of the probably more liked medic of the group, and
The non-psycho one.
the non-psycho one, yeah, basically.
Alright, Aaron, what are you playing?
I'm fat. I'm an ogre.
And who is Fet's companion?
Mr. Easy.
Oh god. Alright,
Brilliant.
so Hariel, who are you playing and who is your companion?
I am Sergeant Samael Fit, also known as Thermite. I'm going to be trying to lead this ragtag bunch of misfits.
Trying being the key word.
The key word, yes. Into the Emperor's war zones. My companion and second in command is Corporal Warner.
Alright. Who's next on the list?
It's me, right?
Chris.
I'm
Yep.
Chris, and I'm playing Gideon Thorn, also known as Piker. And my companion is Voxbox, and I'm a weapon specialist.
Yeah, none of you. Yeah. Right, so basically, just to give an overview idea, this is Only War. It's another one of the 40k RPGs. This one is a little different than the other ones, though. In this one, you're not a powerful space marine or a exceptional individual who's part of like the Emperor's Holy Inquisition or anything amazing. You guys are just a simple band of guardsmen, which are basically Imperial soldiers. You guys are one amongst billions of others just like you, and basically you're just nameless numbers on a sheet that people care very little about. But you guys are essentially on the front line of the Imperium's war for pure survival, and you face horrors that most people can't even imagine, and you don't have the power or the weapons that the other forces of the Imperium have to deal with. So a lot of this game's to do with the shock and the horror of war and dealing with it as just a normal human being as best you can, unless you're an ogre.
Right.
So a little backstory to this campaign, how it is. These guys are all part of a squad in a regiment called the Thermian Tent. And the Thermian Tent have been raised from the world of Thermos, which is a horrible backwater mining world at the edge of the Imperium in the Segmentum Pacificus, which is the western edge of the galaxy, if you want to know that. And they've been raised to join a holy crusade that is about to begin in the Emperor's name into a area of space called the Sanctum Sector, which is a space of over 1,000 worlds, which were basically lost in millennia past to the Imperium and have been taken over by either roving bands of Xenos like Orcs or Dark Elder, or have been lost to human kingdoms that basically broke away from the Imperium and declared their own independence, or even worse, a large amount of them have fallen to the corruption of chaos. And this fellow here, with the ridiculous armor that looks quite cool, has been preparing for this crusade most of his life and has finally convinced the High Lords of Terra that something needs to be done about the Sanctum Sector and it can no longer be abandoned to be left at the wayside from the Emperor's light any longer. So a vast crusade called the Aurelian Crusade has been prepared of over 100 Imperial Guard regiments from, as many worlds, hundreds of ships, and basically millions of men have been brought together to bring this crusade into compliance. It will probably take many times that number before this crusade is finished, but you guys have the luck, quote unquote, of being part of the first wave of this campaign that will probably last decades before it's completed and everything is brought back into compliance or destroyed. So where we are going to begin this campaign is you guys have just finished your year, roughly, of regimental training on your world, but your world has been preparing for it for a long time before that. For about 5 years now, machines, weapons, and everything else have been compiled and put together in order to raise your regiment. You're actually one of the smaller regiments in this crusade, only of about 6,000 men and women, because Thermos is a pretty small border world. It doesn't have a very large population, only 50 million. But the reason you have been raised is because one particular group in your regiment, called the Grenadier Guards, are well known for their specialist ability with explosives, which you guys are a part of. So you guys are part of the specialist regiment. Specifically, you're the Grenadier Guards, 2nd Company, first Squad. And tonight is the night of the founding, which is basically when your world celebrates the official, finishment or construction of your regiment. So tonight is probably, as you've all been told, the last night you will probably ever see your world again, because casualty rates and attrition rates in the Imperial Guard are extremely high, and even if you do see it through to the end of the crusade, or at least to disbandment, which could be at least a decade from now, most of you will never return to Thermos again. You'll either be, retired into PDF regiments, or, resettled on worlds that you conquer in order to form a compliant population. So to most of you, this is not particularly a sad moment, because none of you particularly want to be on Thermos, since it's a shithole. But for the most part, there is a bit of, anxiety that this is probably the last time you will ever see your homes, the only home you have ever known again. Most of you have never even seen the sky, because you live in vast underground cities, along the cones of huge supervolcanoes, which are the only form of heat and power on the otherwise frozen, desolate world of Thermos. And that's where we're going to begin. So where we begin, you find yourselves inside the aptly named bar inside the city of Bellium Primus, which is the capital city of Thermos. The bar is called the Grenadier's Grave, because it is generally the watering hole that guardsmen and grenadiers from the local Grenadiers barracks, which is the only one on the planet, which is nicely called ATX 103. It's basically where they train and billet you guys while regiments are being constructed. And you guys find yourself inside Grenadier's Grave. And as we begin our story of sacrifice, heroism, and horrors beyond imagining, you find yourselves seated in benches, staring off into a very, very, very packed bar with a rather large crowd of people, essentially all around you. So, there should be sound now. Everyone can hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, is it music?
Yeah, there's a bit of odd music in the background while people are drinking, gambling, and basically enjoying what's left of their night before, you ship out tomorrow morning. Basically, around a week ago, an Imperial naval transport vessels arrived in orbit around Thermos, as well with an Imperial naval escort squadron, and they're going to take you to the rally point at Hastapur, which is the capital of the Segmentum Pacificus, to join the rest of the fleet before the Great Crusade begins. So when you're in the bar, you find yourself staring at the people who over the last year have become your comrades in arms, for better or worse. At the head of the table, amongst you all, is your stalwart sergeant, Samuel Thermite Fifth, who has, for the last 2 months, led you guys through the hell that was your training as Grenadier Guards. You're not quite sure what to make of Fit. He's quite old for one of the Brethren, which is basically people who come from Thermos. And he quite funnily calls this enlistment into the Guard his retirement, as he'd rather get off this planet and perhaps live through what's to come so he can finally retire somewhere peaceful. So do you want to tell us a bit more about your character, Hariel?
Sure can. So, as our lovely GM has said, Fit is probably one of the oldest members in the regiment of the Brethren. And yes, for him, this is basically a retirement because he doesn't really want to be in this planet anymore. He's seen.
You don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Yeah, he's seen a lot of shit happen. You know, a lot of workers in the mines just die, and for him, this is a worthy cause to get out of the planet. You know, there's no one here for him anymore. He's like basically the last one of his line because anyone else in his family's passed away. And for him, yeah, this is a lovely, lovely place to be.
All right. Just across, well, no, just to the side of your stalwart sergeant is Corporal Warner, aptly named Sentinel Streak. He is your squad's second in command, and you're quite sure that in the times ahead, he will probably be the bedrock upon which your squad is based. It could be said that if Sergeant Fifth, or Thermite, is your, well, let's say, the keystone and the arch that forms your squad, then Streak is without a doubt the foundation that keeps you all together. There's been some rough weeks before now. Some of the squad definitely weren't as open or as receptive as before, but through the work of both Thermite and Sentinel, you formed a pretty impressive squad. So much so that you managed to grab the first squad position, which is a very sought after and well-honored position in any platoon. So you guys have done pretty well for yourselves, to say the least, and you're quite sure that Streak is definitely going to be someone you can all count on in the future. He's already proven a few times that he's willing to go the extra mile or even sacrifice himself for the betterment of other people. And you guys have noticed over time that this may be because he's a fanatical member of a cult of the Emperor called the Redemptionists, which basically seek to redeem their sins in the eyes of the Emperor by fighting in combat for him, basically. So while you're all a bit worried that he more or less wants to martyr himself as soon as possible, because you all quite like him because he's looked after you the last couple of months, nonetheless, you're pretty sure that, you know, without him the squad wouldn't be anything that it should be, and you're all glad that, you know, he's there to see you through it. So that is Sentinel for you guys. Then to the immediate left of Thermite is your good old friend Piker. So Piker is a bit of a, let's put it this way, he's part of the malcontents, would be the best way to describe it in the group. Though, funnily enough, those malcontents have turned into something of the soul of your squad. Piker is noble born, but he had a strange and rough childhood, and has basically joined the Guard to redeem himself. So Chris, do you want to tell us more about your character?
Yeah, like, basically he's the son of a foreman, which are basically the nobility of this planet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he landed like a cushy job and all that, but he's a bit of a slacker, so he fucked up basically. So
Yeah.
Some people got killed, and he sullied his father's name and got shipped out to become a guardsman.
So that's Piker, basically lazy to a T, but somehow manages to cheer everybody up, and has somehow, along with his companion, Crater, off in the corner there, gambling with someone else, has basically formed.
Vox,
Oh no, no, yeah, Voxbox, sorry, yeah, has basically formed the soul of the squad, and between them they make up something of a comic duo that, despite the situation, seems to have more or less brought a smile to everyone's face. And you know, you're pretty sure that they're definitely going to be what the morale of the squad centers around in the future. So across the way from Piker is your medic, Locke, also known as Corporal. What the fuck is your second name? Oreos. Corporal
Oreos.
Oreos. So, Oreos is basically the exact opposite from the men standing across from him. He is the begrudging member of your unit, and though he has so far proven himself to be a pretty brilliant field medic and doctor, all of you have more or less begrudgingly accepted him because he has a strange, weird streak, and you have noted at times that he has odd tendencies which leave you all a bit uneasy, to say the least. But you need a good combat medic, and he was by far the best one on the guards that you could find. So he's formed a pretty solid pillar that is your squad, and without him, a lot of you guys would be probably dead or have a lot more long-lasting injuries. So why don't you tell us a bit more about your character, Phil?
Well, I've not had the nicest life growing up. My parents were pretty sick and twisted. They did some things. Things that didn't quite leave me the sanest of people. But, you know, I was intelligent. I knew how to do things. I knew how to hide most of my tendencies from people. But with being intelligent and with being skilled comes a thirst. I have a few kinks when it comes to inflicting
Kinks?
pain.
That's
Yeah.
what he calls murder, Kings.
I went and worked at a mine. I was in the medical center for a while. And, well, a few people, you know, they might not have had the best time while they were there. They got out all right, most of them.
Mostly.
I caused a bit of pain. Maybe some people, you know, got a little painful. Well, anyway, let's just say that's behind us. I need to leave the planet, and this is the best way for me. I feel that getting out of here and maybe seeing the universe.
And hurting everybody in it is a better way to do things.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Pain happens. Pain happens where we're going. So I'll be right at home. Everything's fine. It's good.
Yeah, so instead of being like the guy in Band of Brothers constantly screaming for morphine, you don't want anyone to have morphine.
No one's getting any pain relief from me
That's
now.
my morphine.
So your companion, such that she is Guardsman Venna Angel Harner, which is this woman standing over in the corner there. Out of all the squad mates in first squad, Guardsman Harner is a tough one to get an angle on for any of you. She joined your squad about halfway through your training as you needed a medical auxilia, and she was pretty dubious to begin any sort of commission with you guys to begin with, and you had to convince her to even bother joining up to join Oreos, because no other auxilia really wanted anything to do with them. But you eventually did manage to convince her, but since then you've learned very little about her. She's quite... she keeps to herself. She's basically the epitome of a loner. You're pretty sure that something quite terrible probably happened to her in her childhood, or something that has made her quite withdrawn, but she doesn't really speak about it. Though in the last few weeks you have grown to see that she does seem to have accepted you all one by one, and sort of treats you like her family now. Though she still talks very little, and you know very little about her, she's, helped set bones and, dragged a couple of you out of injuries and training more times than you can count. So, Voxbox, which is this guy over here, who I actually forgot to mention, Basically dubbed her your guardian angel, and ever since then the nickname Angel sort of stuck, and she even smiled at that. So since then she's, you've all accepted her and decided to leave her be, and she seems to have, acknowledged that and, joined your squad in full. So even though you don't know much about her, you still, a lot of you owe her your life and vice versa. So you're more than willing to go into combat with her. As well for Piker's comrade, which I forgot, which is Voxbox over here. Voxbox is the other, let's say, scoundrel that forms the soul of this group, along with Piker. He is pretty lowborn, so the two of them form, yet again, something of a comical duo. Whereas Piker is quite lazy, Voxbox is quite active and, gets involved in almost everything, even the stuff he shouldn't poke his nose into. How he got his nickname Voxbox was because a commissar once mentioned jokingly that if the Laud Hailer should break in combat and his voice can't reach the guardsman, he'd simply cut out Voxbox's larynx and use it instead, so loud his voice is. Everyone had a laugh at this, but no one was quite sure whether the commissar was joking or not at the time anymore. And ever since then, the nickname Voxbox has sort of stuck since then. He's a pretty simple man. He likes his women, his AMSEC, his gambling, and his food. And he's quite loud about his complaints. If there's something to complain about, you can be sure that Voxbox will complain about it, jokingly or not. And even though, his constant complaining can get tiresome at times, he's proven to be a pretty stalwart friend to all of you. And he's definitely got a few jokes up his sleeve that have, even in the grimmest times, brought a smile to all of your faces. He's definitely, been in the squad from the start, to say the least. Though he's formed the closest friendship with Piker, like I said. Alright, so next up on our list, seated just to the side of Locke, is Boomer, also known as Delta Tantalakis, is it? Yeah.
Probably.
So, that is your heavy weapons specialist. Boomer is a complicated woman, to say the least. She likes damage and she likes to inflict heavy amounts of it. So, when she was given the choice between condemned to the deep mines or joining the Imperial Guard, she decided to join the Guard, to say the least. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about your character, Bermuda?
Yeah, well, Boomer, or Delta, started out as just a regular, mediocre miner like everyone else. Probably would have never amounted to much. Was always something of a thrill seeker, and like to do dangerous things, risky things. That's why heavy weaponry always was probably meant for her. She was cut out for that. But another way that she got her kicks was through stealing, walking away with things that weren't hers. It didn't even matter if they were valuable or not. Just something's like, ooh, I like that, put it in the pocket. However, she's not very stealthy. You can hear her coming a mile away with her heavy boots, and she doesn't know how to sneak to save her life. So she was often caught, and finally it had all accumulated, and so she was given a choice to how to repay for her crimes. It's either be sent to the deep mines or possibly get off the planet, and they'd also teach her how to use weapons and shit, and she was like, yeah, hell yes. So
out of everyone, she has probably taken to her position better than anyone.
Yeah, she's living it up and can't believe that that this was a punishment for something. So yeah, she made out like a bandit. Yeah. All
right, and her companion, which was an awkward beginning to a relationship, is Cade Varus, also known to everybody else as Crater, who is off in the corner there gambling, with Voxbox egging him on. Crater, there's one thing you just need to know about him. He is an angry, angry man. He was born in the deep mines, which is what Boomer could have been condemned to, And the only way out of the deep mines is two ways: death through overworking, or being reassigned to one or the other adepta on the planet by an imperial edict. So he decided to take the second option, and once the regiment was being formed, sometimes the Departamento Immunitorum looks to the dregs of society to fill up its recruitment rosters, and he was one of the first of the deep mines to agree to join. Since then, he's basically been living it up, though he found it difficult to find any squad willing to work with him, because basically he was an uncontrollable maniac who, was a complete loose cannon and broke away at this, any sudden provocation or anything that didn't go his way. It only seemed to be Boomer who was able to knock some sense into him, and through some private talks and a growing friendship, basically convinced him, to temper his rage and just to throw it at the enemy when it was needed. Since then, Crater has become basically her faithful armsman, and together they form perhaps the best heavy weapons squad in the entire Thermian tent, which is quite impressive to say the least. Even though both of them are kind of unpredictable individuals, together they form a pretty impressive heavy weapons squad. That leaves the last of our players, which is the wonderful giant who has nowhere to sit, so he simply sits on his ass at the side of the table because he'd crush any noble. Yeah. Is a specialist, quote unquote, Fet.
Oh, he's special.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very special.
He's a Ogren from one of the worlds that moons Thermos, called Esta 3, where these are fairly high gravity moons because of their small size, more like asteroids than anything else. And several Ogren clans inhabit these moons, constantly fighting between themselves, and are mostly left to their own devices until the Imperial Guard comes to recruit some of them into the Thermian regiments. And Fet was one of the Ogrens lucky enough or smart enough to be considered viable for this duty. So, Aaron, why don't you tell us a bit about your character?
Well, I'm very smart, as the man already mentioned.
Yep.
You see, the Imperium, it's basically run by a bunch of really clever children, right? But it's not safe for them out there. And so they have us Ogren watch the little ones. We're fiercely loyal. I especially love my little buddy Easy. And so I'll just make sure everybody's safe, right?
The voice is fucking amazing.
I applaud.
So, his companion, as the faithful Ogren has just mentioned, is Hallis Forbin, also known to everybody in the squad as Easy, for his fairly easygoing and slow personality. He doesn't talk often, but when he does it with a pretty tempered and well thought out, argument. Sometimes this can annoy everyone in the squad, as it can take like 3 or 4 shouts through the Vox before he responds to any commands or even acknowledges what he's doing. Sometimes he even accomplishes an objective before other people even mention it, baffling everyone. But overall, Easy has a very a very easygoing and likable personality. No one can find any fault with him, and he's been a good friend to everyone in the squad, especially Fet. Fet seems to like his easygoing, easygoing and slow nature, as it seems to correspond with Fet. Easy never uses particularly big words or speaks that often, and they seem to have something of a unspoken understanding. So that when the Departamento brought the Ogrens to finally join up with the regiment, he volunteered to take Fet as his take Fet under his wing and basically look after him in combat and non-combat situations, as Ogrens tend to need caretakers to fit into normal Imperial society. And that's basically everything you need to know about Easy and the rest of the squad in general. So as you guys all stare across the table at each other, drinking and eating, an uneasy silence is broken off in between your festivities as you guys all think about the weight of what is to come. You can remember that just literally a few hours ago, you were all kneeling in front of the great chapel of the Emperor at the heart of Bellium Primus, and swearing your oath before the sacred Aquila, which was descending from the roof, bound by great golden chains, as you and 6,000 other guardsmen of the Thermian tent swore the oath to the Emperor and the Imperium of loyalty, and it's still all quite fresh in your minds. And even though the enormity of the situation and the moment lays in front of you, that's something that seems to be burned into all of your minds. And everyone else in the bar, who's also part of the Thermian tent, but most of them are just regular linesmen, seem to be trying to get as drunk as possible to, still their nerves for what is to come. In the corner of the room, a pretty great cheer goes up as the gambling section of the room is probably the most lively area, and you can see Voxbox and Crater over there shouting and cheering as well, though Voxbox is louder than 10 men put together. And it's pretty clear that Crater is doing quite well, and well, you can tell that because if he wasn't doing well, the table probably would have been flipped by now. So everything is going quite well, and for the last while, this is your last peaceful night on Thermos before all shit goes together. Angel herself has been quiet all night, even though she drank with you for a while. She's wandered over the fire and is simply standing before it, staring into the ashes as if she's a million miles away. So what do you guys want to do while all this is going on, if anything?
I'm just sitting, like, thinking to myself while, smoking a low stick.
Mm-hmm.
Just contemplating the gravity of the words spoken a few moments ago.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna drink my drink.
They basically just got like an entire fucking decanter of like alcohol and gave it to you, Fat.
I'll drink that.
I kind of want to go up to one of the Thermian guardsmen behind Crater and bump him into Crater.
Oh shit.
That's what you want to do, you can do that. But you're pretty sure most of the guardsmen in here, especially the ones around the gambling table, are gambling away most of the throne geld they've earned over the last half year, which they're going to sorely miss in the campaign ahead. So, yeah, most people seem to be spending a huge and exorbitant amount of money to enjoy themselves before the hell of what's to come. You're probably sure that that's because they're convinced that the majority of them will probably be dead within the next year, let alone the next 10.
Mm. Okay, I'll leave it at for now. I'll just sit here just thinking about doing that.
Thinking about murder and evil.
Rubbing my chin, going,
You notice
playing
two
with
people.
a knife on the table.
You notice two people by the bar making out drunkenly, and there's a candle on the bar, and the female's hair is dangerously close to that candle, and you're watching intently, hoping her hair lands in the fire of that candle, and then it does, and you rejoice.
You're a 6-6 man, Locke.
Thank you very much. Oh, and because we didn't, the GM is Warren. Thank you very much for GMing for us, Warren.
I forgot about myself. That's
Yeah.
So, as the night continues and you guys just make idle conversation and continue to, joke and laugh at each other, or just drink solemnly and, make toasts to the people who either didn't pass training or literally died in the live fire exercises, because there were quite a few casualties, among others. Especially in the war games for the Grenadier Guard regiment. You hear a pretty large ruckus coming from over at the gambling station, and this time, instead of the ruckus laughter of Voxbox and the grinning smile of Crater, things have become a lot more heated. Voxbox is looking pretty stern and solemn, while Crater looks as if he's about to fucking explode. The guardsman in front of him, who seems oblivious to this, as he seems to have won quite big suddenly, is gleefully pulling a large stack of throne geld into his hands, while the guardsmen around him from one of the regiment's line companies, pat him on the back solemnly, and it looks like he's just taken about half a year of Crater's income. And Crater is extremely pissed about it. And you just hear him scream over, "That's not fucking possible, there's no way you had deuce low tens." And then Voxbox just sort of goes over and says, hey man, come on, They're not worth it. And then he just sort of looks at you and says, "Shut up, man. There's no way he had that. We've been playing straight rolls the entire game. How does he suddenly pull that out of his ass?" And he just sort of turns to the guardsman, looks at him again, and points a finger at him and says, "There's no way you're not fetting cheating." And then the guardsman just sort of backs up and says, "Hey, it's all part of the roll, friend. There's nothing I can do about it. The Emperor
Did
gives
someone
luck
say
to who he
fair?
will."
No, Fett, they're arguing.
I'm sitting here rubbing my hands together.
I
Sentinel,
think they said fat.
they didn't mean you.
Is there another fat in here?
It's the curse word.
So is his name basically fuck? Is that
Yeah.
what his name is? Wonderful.
So Easy just comes up to Fett and like he puts a reassuring hand on your shoulder and just pats you. He doesn't say anything, but it makes you feel better, Fett.
Back to drinking.
Right. Sentinel, I think we might have to defuse this.
He just nods and says, "Right, you are, Sarge. I don't think we should leave that going on much longer." Crater looks as if he's about to blow him.
Yeah, and I get up, start walking like I light up another low stick, and I nod to Boomer to come over as well.
Yeah,
And
she says, "You think he's going to listen to authority? You really think so?"
And I come up behind Vox and say, "So what's going on here, guardsman?"
So he just turns around and recognition runs over his face and he goes, "Oh, Sarge, nothing to see here really. Just us and the boys here are having a bit of a disagreement. That's all it is, isn't it, Crater? We had a bit of a bad luck, but we'll just play another hand, right?" And then Crater just sort of like slams his fist down on the table and says, "We fetting will not. This snake here is cheating me. I'm not going to lose half a year's gelt just because this weasel decided to use loaded dice."
I told you he said my name.
Can I,
Easy just shrugs and like goes back to drinking.
can I try and throw my voice to pretend to be the guardsman saying, "I did cheat," to Crater, to see what happens?
Oh, please.
Fat walks up and says, "I'm fat."
So these two guardsmen behind you, as they hear your like deep booming voice, just go, "What the fuck?" and they like back off.
I walk over to the table and I extend my hand to the guardsman and say, "May I have those dice, please?"
So the guard just sort of looks at you and starts sweating for a bit, and he says, "Normally I would, Sarge, but you know how it is. It's bad luck to give another man his dice. Your dice, sorry."
I keep my hand extended and the low stick like burning.
Yeah, you burn it, and you look at him like you're not going to take any shit, yeah?
Yeah.
So he just looks to his friends behind him, all look kind of nervous as well, and then he just sort of slowly extends a hand and drops the dice into your palm.
Yeah. I, jiggle them a little and say, "Respect to your elders is something you should learn, boy." And I toss the dice.
Okay, so the dice roll for a bit, and everyone watches it like really anxiously. The guardsman in front of you, who handed them to you, and his two friends behind them, look as if like the following roll is going to determine like their future or their life, if you know what I mean. And it rolls for about a second or two, and then they both land on what looked like one is going to land on 3 and one is on 4. But then they seem to shimmy and like move a little, and they both go double 6s. And then Crater just looks at them and then looks back up at you again, back to the guardsman, and goes, "I betting knew it." And then he slams his fist into the table again, and the whole table shakes, and the dice like fly up into the air a bit, fall back down, and then are straight on double 6s again.
Yeah, I put my hand on Crater's shoulder and I look at the guardsman and say, "So what do you have to say about this?"
Then you can see the guardsman is like, sweating. He looks back between you and Crater, and anyone who's nearby that wants to can roll a perception test for him. Awareness.
Do we get the audio bonus, or is it?
It's just sight.
Okay.
But everything in here is accustomed to Thermian vision, so you don't need your goggles.
Yeah. Any bonuses?
Nope.
Fuck it. I'll spend a fate point to bump it over.
Right?
I have 2. I'm a rich bitch.
Wow. The Ogren is really aware.
Wow.
Okay,
I told you.
so both Thermite and Fet both notice that the guardsmen the guardsmen's friends beside him are both reaching down like they're going for their daggers, if you know what I mean. And you can also see that Crater seems to have already determined that he's going to murder these folks because he's going straight to his sidearm at the side of his, infantry fatigues, and it looks like things are about to boil over pretty quickly.
I kind of squeeze down harder on Kratos' shoulder and say, "Are you sure you want to pull a gun on a superior officer, son?
Yeah, so the guards.
Because if you do, you do know what happens if I die by your hand.
So
Is
while
your
that-
life that worthless?"
He's aiming at the guards, not you.
So no, it's not Crater shooting you. He's angry with the other guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So while
And I'm saying this to the
to the guards. That's what I figured. So while this sort of question is hanging tight in the air and like the entire bar has gone kind of quiet for a bit, you guys hear the door to the Grenadier's grave sort of open, and a bunch of men file in, and everyone sort of like breaks the silence for a minute to look to see who it is, and you see that it is a old combatant in arms friend of yours, Sergeant Jovian Ellis, which you can read about there if you want to. He's basically the sergeant of the second squad in your company, and he's come in with a bunch of his squad mates, and he just looks around and he sort of sees you and the situation that's going on and smiles, and he says, "Oh, Termite, you and your ragtag bunch of fools are up to some mischief again, it seems."
I give a little chuckle and say, "As always, Alice, as always."
So Alice just moseys on over, and a lot of the guardsmen and things get out of his way as he's coming over. And he passes by you, Locke, and a couple of his men come up behind him and everything. And he walks over and comes over to you and says, Now, gentlemen, this is a night of festivities. We shouldn't be getting into any undue ruckuses. You should save your anger for the enemies to come in the Emperor's name. Isn't that right?" And then he looks to the, very nervous guardsman just over from you and says, "I know you, right? Mekala from 8th Platoon Line Infantry, right? Your sergeant is a great friend of mine. We grew up in the same mine hole. Vossel, that's his name, right?" And then you can see the guardsman sort of sweats a bit and says, "Yes, sir, that's correct. Sergeant Vessel is an honourable man, sir." And then Ellis just sort of nods and says, that he is, and a very good friend of mine. He'd be remiss if he knew that one of his troopers was, considering assaulting a superior officer right now, especially one from the Grenadier Guard, wouldn't you say?" And then the guardsman sort of looks over and says, he lowers his hands and goes back into a normal stance and says, "I don't know what you mean, sir. We were just having a friendly conversation." Then he turns to Crater and says, "I seem to have done you a bit hard by. Here, you can have your gelt back, and you can have the pot too." And Crater just sort of eases a bit and then greedily grabs all the throne gelt and starts stuffing it into his pouch, if you know what I mean. And those guys slowly get up and leave the place without much else of a conversation. And Alice just turns to you, Thermite, and says, "Well, it looks like I got here just in time to defuse another scandal in the squad, or in the regiment, wouldn't you say, Fit?"
Yeah, well, I had it under control. Don't worry. But
So
thanks for the backup.
Yeah. So he just laughs and says, "It's no problem." And he just sort of looks around and says, "Hey, I've got a bit of a proposition for you. It looks like you and your boys and mine could definitely use with blowing off some steam. How about we have a little bit of a friendly wager between squads?"
Shoot.
He says, "Here, follow me into the alley just out behind the bar." And he starts walking off with his men.
Bring some
So-
lube.
Who wants to follow, if any? Sentinel is definitely going to follow.
Can I? Did that guardsman leave the dice, or did he take them?
He'll have to dice. So.
Oh, I'm so taking those dice unless anyone else is.
Okay, you have a pair of loaded dice then.
Are you guys like telling me to come, or?
Well, Voxbox is coming over to you and he's laughing about the situation. So you can stay or you can go if you want. It's your choice.
Yeah,
I was interrupted for a while you were talking. What's the wager? Did he mention what it was?
No, he didn't mention what it was. He just said you're gonna have a bit of fun out back. If you
Oh. Oh, okay.
Wow.
We're bringing Lube.
Boomer doesn't want
I
to
look
see
over
this.
to the squad. I look over to the squad, and I just see who wants to go, who doesn't want to go, and I'll go, of course.
I like fun.
Yeah, come along, Fett.
Did you say you like fun or I like following?
Well, both really.
I whistle over to Angel to let her know that we're leaving.
She just looks back and nods without saying anything.
We're coming, but like I give Voxbox my beer, so he's like carrying two.
And he drinks
There
it.
we go. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, he downs it like in a gulp.
Oh god, Fat! I wanted you to carry it, not whatever. And I just grab another one off another table.
Fox just drinks, grins at you and grabs another one off a guardsman who isn't paying attention and walks out the door with you. Alright. So you guys get outside. You guys can see this, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
It's everyone that wanted to be here except Voxbox. He's not here. Let's see.
It was too easy to bother coming.
Easy is not going to come now. He's lost in his own little world, drinking his beer. So once you guys get outside, Alice just comes up and says, just a friendly wager between squads. You guys narrowly beat us out of the first position, and I think it's only fair we have a little bit of a, friendly game to see if you guys truly deserve it. And he sort of grins at you again and slaps you on the back and says, see those bottles over there? He points to these ones here. They're the waste from the bar that no one is paying much attention to, and then he slowly whips out his las pistol sidearm and says, how about we see who has the best aim on the squad? You pick your best shooter, I'll pick my best shooter. Whoever wins, let's see, first the honor of the victory, and then how about a month's worth of pay? Sergeant pay. And then his man just sort of look at him greedily.
Fair enough. Who is the best shot in the squad?
My ballistic skill is 43.
Mine's 50.
Oh, Chris.
Wow.
What does Filato give?
-10.
Oh, it gives a penalty.
Yeah.
I give a bonus.
Single shot gives you a +10. Semi-auto it's 0. Full auto is -10. And then you have range modifiers.
Did we bring the mortar?
No.
So yeah, he mentions that as soon as he says best shooter, I glance over to Piker, and grin and say, Piker, you're up.
Yeah, okay, so he just flips his last pistol out of his belt.
All right, so Alice just sort of chuckles for a minute and says, well, it's easy for me. I'm the best shot in my squad. And he just stands up here and says, Trooper, get up here. As he looks at Piker. So he, nods to you and says, a gentleman always lets his adversary goes first. Feel free to take the first shot.
Right.
So these bottles are quite small. So they're -20 modifier because of size. Right.
If you aim on single shot, it's 0 modifier.
Yeah. Didn't roll.
Yeah.
No. Oh shit.
There we go.
Oh,
Alright.
crap.
So
Too
Piker,
drunk.
Fucking re-roll it.
your eyes are all weary. Yeah, you can re-roll it if you
Yeah,
want.
I'm gonna reroll it.
This is
'cause,
the honor of the
damn.
squad here, man.
You rolled a 93. You can't really roll worse.
Fucking Chris.
Still miss.
Well, I'm back to like, what is this? Is this Death Watch again? Fuck me.
You have no luck in these games. The Emperor doesn't like you. So you fire off a shot, but your eyes are a bit weary from all your carousing in the bar earlier, and you just impact the side of one of the refuse crates there, and there's a bit of a smouldering hole where it went through it. And Alice just sort of says, "Ooh, seems like First Company is a bit lacking in the old shooting skills. I suggest that once we get on one of the barges above Fit, you run your men through some firing drills. They're a bit rusty."
They're drunk.
He just laughs and says, "I'm drunk too, but watch this." And he just takes aim, and let's see if he hits. So he fires and goes just over the tip of one of the bottles, and he curses and says, "Fetting Emperor's throne," and then he sort of laughs and says, "Seems like we both need to run through drills, eh, Fit?"
Oh, yes.
And he just sort of laughs and says, "The Emperor's enemies will be shuddering when we hit the field," and he looks cold again and says, "All right, Trooper, your turn."
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
So
Was it dodge?
No,
The wind like blows it over.
I'll roll 100 if it rolls. I'll roll 100 if it rolls a 1, it dodges.
Oh, dear. Roll it public.
Nah, it doesn't.
Oh.
An 88 would have dodged.
Yeah. So the silver bottle near the center just explodes in a heaping, pile of melted glass and smelling of ozone. And Alice just sort of looks back at Piker and smacks him hard on the shoulder and says, "Damn good shot." And he just says, "Oh well, it's the honor of the second squad is in this." And he just takes a heavy aim again and says, "Better not Fetty miss this." So he takes a shot, and the green bottle at the back also explodes. And he says, "Ha! 1 for 1." And then he looks back at you and says, "Your turn, Trooper. What did they say your name was again? Thorn, was it? Best of luck."
Yes.
And all his men cheered when he shot.
You have another fate point.
No, he only has 1.
Yeah, that one.
So he just goes, "Oh, a close one, but not quite up to par, I'm afraid." And he sort of grins and takes aim again.
I was going to roll command and inspire you to give you another +10, but you just rolled.
Oh, well, yeah.
You
Okay.
can do that next time. So he takes aim again, and this one whiffs pretty high over. It looks like his hand shakes it a bit at the last second, and he just goes, "Ah, damn it all to the hells!" And he says, "This beer has got me all dreary-eyed, and my reflexes are none too sharp right now." And he just turns to Fit and laughs again and says, "Old age, am I right, friend?"
Oh, yes. Old age is the killer of men.
So he just he sort of laughs again and says, "Well, let's see if the young and foolish can do any better." Mr. Torn, your turn.
Yeah. So he's like
And I
holding
say,
the beer like in one hand and the pistol in the
You
other.
take
and
a
he
swig.
takes- Yeah. It's good though.
Everyone in the group chuckles, including the other squad. If you know.
I say, Thorn, if you do not hit this, I'm drilling you without
What?
Vox around. You won't have help in the next exercises.
So as you're,
Boom! A +10.
yeah, go ahead. Nice. So you shoot through, let's say, the orange one at the side and go right through it and blow up the red one as well. And then everybody cheers, and Voxbucks just goes, "Take that, second squad scum!" And Ellis just turns to him and says, "Excuse me, Trooper?" And Iverick just goes, excuse me, sir, and he just walks off. I'm gonna go check on Crater. I don't think he should be left alone.
You better.
Yeah, so he looks a bit like sullen and walks off again, clearly a little too drunk to be here right now. And Alice just sort of turns to Fit and says, that one's a bit of a talker.
A wild
isn't he?"
card.
Yeah. So he just sort of smiles and says, I suppose that counts as 2, he says, and looks back at the smoking bottles again and says, I'm hard pressed to make any difference here, but let's see if I can. And then he takes another shot.